Yo, what's going on, guys? Jivan back with another video, and today we're going to be talking about 10 tips to get you the god tier mentality. I get asked all the time how I stay so chill while playing Fortnite. You know, it's a very aggravating game. Well, in this video, I got you covered. Don't forget to use code JivanTV and check out the merch, link in description. And without further ado, let's hop into it. Tip number 1 is learning to gauge your anger. Anger is one of those things that kind of boils up over time. You know, the first time you lose a game, it's going to kind of start to scratch, but then it slowly builds up with every single game throughout the day. So you need to start learning to identify exactly when you're at your breaking point. That way you can hop off or go into creative mode. Once you get to that breaking point, it's just time to call it quits for arena or whatever you were doing and switch it up to something more relaxing and easygoing. That's going to be something you're going to learn over time, but once you figure it out, you'll be raging way less often. Tip number 2 is going to be a little bit deep. It's about turning sadness into positivity. All right, hear me out, all right? In truth, when you lose, you're sad. You're not angry initially. You're sad. But that sadness turns to anger because you don't know how else to deal with it. What you need to do is practice turning that sadness, instead of into anger, turn it into motivation to avoid being sad again in the future. What this means is when you lose a game, try to figure out why you lost. That way, when you get into that situation again, you'll know exactly how to handle it, and you can avoid losing again in the future and avoid being sad again in the future. On the counter, if you turn your sadness into anger, you're not going to learn anything because you're just going to be raging. So try calming down, breathing, figuring out what you did wrong so that you don't have to feel that way again. If you do this over time, you're going to see so much improvements in your game. Tip number 3 is all about maturity. Anytime you lose, get into the habit of saying GG's and just being a good sport. Doing this will not only keep your own mentality up, but it'll also help you make connections in the community. If you ever try to get serious into competitive, streaming, content creation, I can guarantee you that people are going to be more inclined to make connections with you and be your friend if you're being a good sport rather than raging. I'll tell you from personal experience, anytime there's another creator that I fight in game and they just get toxic, I'm never really going to talk to that person, plain and simple. Like, I've had other creators that are just really bad at maintaining their emotions come to my chat, talk straight up trash to me, and I just block them. Plain and simple, you want to make connections with big creators or just make more friends in the community, be positive. Tip number 4 is understanding the odds of the game. In each solo match, there are 100 players, and only one player is going to come out on top. This means that competition is insanely high, and you really shouldn't beat yourself up for losing a game. Technically speaking, if you win 1 in 100 games, then you're winning a perfectly average amount of games. If you win 5% of the games, that means you're winning 5 times more than the average. So all in all, I'm just saying, understand it's a tough game, there's a lot of competition, and so you really shouldn't beat yourself up. Tip number 5 is about understanding that we've all been where you are right now, skill-wise. Let's say you're struggling to hit champs. We've all been there at some point in our careers. Everybody starts out knowing nothing about Fortnite and has to work their way up the chain. If you're struggling to hit champs, that likely means that your fighting just isn't quite there yet, and you have a little bit further to push. There's not going to be any simple answer to fix your struggle for hitting champs. It's just going to be about practicing the right stuff until you get there. The way people get out of their slumps, get out of those skill caps where they feel like they can't improve anymore, is just by practicing their weak points and continuing to struggle with the things that they're not good at until they get good at them. So the point of this tip is to keep your head up, keep your grind up, and if you put in the effort, one day you will get better. There's no doubt in that. Tip number 6 might make a lot of people upset, so I'm sorry. This tip is try to not focus on the things you can't change. For example, your FPS, your ping, your input, whatever it is, try not to over-focus on that stuff. Mainly because there's literally no point in focusing on it. What are you going to get for blaming your ping after each game? The only thing you're going to get from that is a lack of motivation, a lack of helpful feedback from the last game, because you're just blaming your ping for everything. You're not going to learn anything. Basically, if you're trying to make it in competitive and you're blaming your ping every time you die, that's not going to go well. I'm sorry to say it. So anytime you catch yourself blaming your ping, your FPS, whatever it is, try to notice that, stop yourself from doing it, and try to figure out things that you could have done to work around the mistakes you made in the game. One quick example is, you're on high ping, somebody's trying to take your wall, they get it first try. Instead of trying to hold that wall, tunnel away, create some distance so that you don't have to hold that wall, because you know they're going to take it anyway. I'm on 0 ping, and I still don't stand in one place holding my wall. I expect every single enemy that approaches me to take my wall first try. I hope that's helpful. Tip number 7 is one of my absolute favorites. Practice focusing on the positives from the previous game. A lot of people focus on the fact that they lost the game, they didn't win, but they overlook the fact that they did so many good things throughout the game. Let's say the second kill that you had that game was just absolutely perfect. You absolutely clipped the player, but then you end up losing the game and you rage and you completely forget the fact that you had a crazy moment earlier that game. Instead of raging, try to think back through the game, think about the good things that happened, and that'll help keep your mentality up for the next game. This is especially important in duos. Let's say you guys make it to an end game, but you get 10th place and you wanted to get a top 5. Focus on the stuff that went well throughout the game and be like, yeah, that was an awesome moment right there, good stuff. And then for the most part, focus on figuring out your mistakes at the end of the day. So that way you keep your mentality up through all of the games you play. Tip number 8 is anytime you feel like you aren't improving at all, you feel like everything you're doing is just a waste of time, take a break, think back to where you were a couple months ago. Notice those improvements and applaud yourself, Sometimes it feels like I've been stuck at the same skill level, but then I'll go back literally just one season and I'm like, holy smokes, I've come a long way. Just an FYI, any of these tips, especially that last one, can be applied towards anything in life that you're working on. It can help keep you motivated, keep you positive, and keep a clear head as you work towards your goals. Tip number 9 is all about tourneys. It's okay to take breaks throughout tournaments, especially if you have a bunch of bad games in a row where you die right at the start. You're going to have extra time at the end of the tourney anyway. So if you're really in a bad state of mind, take a little break, maybe 15-20 minutes, and then come back to the tourney and finish it later. Not only will this give you a chance to get back on a good mentality, it will also put you into worse lobbies. If you don't play a tournament for a little bit, it'll put you into the lower point lobbies as other people have passed you in points, and this gives you a chance to shoot back up the leaderboard and have a really good pop-up game. At the end of the day, tournaments are all about having fun for the most part. Unless if you're a top tier pro, top 10 in the world, then it's your actual job. But for all the rest of us, you gotta make sure that you're still having fun while playing. Tip number 10 is basically just gonna be my story of how I trained my own mentality. So I think way back in the day, the first thing that trained my mentality was I had a notebook, and at the end of every single day, I would write down the good things that happened. That way I wouldn't get diluted by the bad things that happened throughout the day. There was a time back in the day where one bad thing would happen and it would ruin my mentality for the rest of the day. But after doing this strategy where I just wrote down good things that happened throughout the day, I got better at staying positive. That was one of the things that brought me towards being a really positive person. But I still raged in video games later on in life. The way I got past that was by maturing myself. Doing all the stuff I talked about in this video, training myself to focus on what went wrong rather than blaming certain things that were out of my control. Taking breaks when I knew I was at a breaking point. Doing all the stuff I talked about in this video helped me improve my mentality. But one other thing, and this is kind of important to mention, anytime I raged, I felt so stupid doing it. When we rage, it just kind of happens, and then afterwards, we're just like, why am I so mad? So with enough time, I realized that I didn't want to feel stupid anymore. And so I trained myself with all the stuff I talked about in this video, trained myself to say GGs, trained myself to be a good example for my stream. And with time and enough practice, I became a very, very positive person, even when playing the most rage-inducing game in the world. Anyways, I hope this video helped you guys out. If it did, be sure to hit that like button, sub if you're new, use code JivanTV, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.